I personally have been so looking forward to this conversation. Kate is such a dear friend for I think almost a decade, and also such a powerful guide when I feel wobbled. She just has so many abilities that we'll go into, but I'm just so excited to have you here today, Kate. Welcome to Sensitive
Oh,
Matters.
thank you for having me. I'm so excited too. And just to get to be with you is the best feeling in the world. But I am also such a huge fan of this podcast. I've listened to every episode. So the fact that I get to come and be a guest is like amazing. So thanks
Hmm.
for having me.
Yes, such an honor. Um, I'd love to explore a little bit a theme that you and I have talked about a lot over the years, and it is about how to truly be healthy in a balanced way. Like, what does it mean to be balanced? And we keep coming back actually to the very name of your business, Natural Instincts. So, what does being connected with your instincts and with your inner authority mean to you? And how, in your understanding, does it relate to health? Physical, mental, spiritual health?
Yeah, well, it's such a big question and such a great opening because I'm exploring this so deeply in my own life right now. Like you mentioned, I'm a mum of very young children and doing so many different things, wearing a lot of hats. And so I was looking for this streamlined way for myself in my own direct experience of finding this balance. And now I just want to throw that word out and never use it again because it's about meeting what's in the moment with what we have. And that for health, that's this whole health, wellness, healing. For me, it's like what's present now and what can I do in this moment? And I think one of the missing links that most people don't look at when they're assessing their health in all aspects is seeing ourselves as a whole multi-dimensional being because we are so much more than these muscle and bones or our bloating or our acne that flares up or our cellulite. We're so much more than these freight train of thoughts, the shoulds, the coulds, the woulds. I'm not good enough, I'm not this, and we're so vast. And we need to encompass all parts of ourselves to really bring it all into this beautiful tapestry of healing and health and wellness. So health for me is it's so far beyond, the yoga and the green juices and the aesthetic side of like the body and the working out. And it's also beyond even the mental health and the processing and the integrating and the looking at, family constellations. And it's so vast. And the word instinct to me is something that we need to relearn. I feel like we are born with it. We are born with these natural instincts because that's how we survive and that's how we get what we need in the world. Like I look at my daughter, she's 1 year old, my youngest, and her ability to get her needs met with no communication, she can't go to the toilet on her own, she can't do anything for herself. And yet her needs are met in such a fundamental way that she has the rest of us in the house circling around her. And that's just like her natural instincts and her natural essence that comes out. And so I feel like there's a rewilding that happens when we start to strip away how it should look and we come back to how we are as these multi-dimensional beings. And that's how I would kind of, I guess, how personally I have reiterated that balance piece for myself. It's like, what do I need in this moment? How can I serve my heart, my body, my soul, and my mind, and and what would Like, what's the highest, most purest thing I can do for myself in this moment? And sometimes that is, going to a yoga class or joining an online course. And sometimes it's just sitting down with a glass of red wine in my hand, looking out at a beautiful tree and just feeling the wind on my face. There's so many beautiful, different ways of healing and wellness. And it's not always how we think it is. And so I think that instinct piece, to answer your question in a very long way, is really listening to that internal voice and giving her, him, or whatever you want to call it, what they need in that moment.
Hmm. There's so much there. And I love whenever we speak because it's so on point for me personally. There's like
Yeah,
it's exactly what I've been sitting with. I was born in Germany, so my intellect is very switched on. I have a lot of ideas of what are good things to do. And just this morning, I was watching my mind. I have a very full day today, and I started feeling overwhelmed. And I was like, wow, it's so big, the story that I tell myself in my head and how it literally affects my entire well being. And I could be
yeah,
having an entire day filled with yoga and whatnot. And yes, it might affect my nervous system in positive ways, but if I let my mind go crazy like that, my organs still might be freaking out. So I love that the rewilding piece, and also that kind of asking ourselves, what does that actually mean? Like, can we separate those things? Can we follow a to-do list of supposed great things, and then the other things are bad, right? It's like
yeah,
that which I feel is so present in the world right now as well. Like, the black and the white, and where can we be in the gray zone and actually gracefully be in that gray zone with a lot of love and compassion of like, the healthiest thing I can do right now is sitting with that glass of wine. Or sometimes for me, it's sinking into the couch and actually putting on a TV show, and my
yeah.
everything gets to be switched off, and it feels so nourishing. So
Mm,
mm, I love that
yeah.
piece.
I love that piece. And I think that that's one of the biggest misconceptions in my industry, in the wellness industry, because like, we've got to do our yoga for this and we've got to do that for that and we've got to do this and we've got to, and then it becomes more stuff for us to do. And we miss the entire point of what these ancient rituals are drenched in, which is to constantly bring us home. And
Mhm.
so when you're listening to yourself, like you shared this morning, and you're like, okay, my mind's doing this and it can do that, and I'm just going to come over here into a softer place and go about my day. When you have that awareness and that presence, it just makes everything not easier, because it's not easy, but it makes everything um, feel as though it's not going to take us out. that
Mhm.
that gray
Mhm.
piece that you were
Mhm.
speaking to, it's like we have a little torch in there. It's
Mhm.
uncomfortable, it's unknown, it's uncertain, but we have something that we can remember, that we have a little torch inside of us, and we're going to get to the other side eventually. But like you said, it's really carving out those pockets of time to really drop into to what is needed, whether it's binging a Netflix show, or actually getting on the mat and rolling around and
Mhm.
unkinking some stuff, or ringing your friend, or, I think it's so what we needed. And I think what's happening in the world, like you just shared, our needs are changing and shifting, and we need to change and shift in the way that we show up within ourselves to be in this new energy that's coming out.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I so agree. Yeah, it makes I remember when I started like studying yoga and all the bits, like um some teachers kept talking about like the yoga off the mat, and that's kind of what it makes me think of, like that piece of being connected to the instincts as we're going about our days. And yes, we'll chat about tools in a little bit. There are amazing tools that help us when we do spiral. Sometimes it's very helpful get on the mat or adjust our diet in a certain way or get a solid night's sleep or whatever it is. Like those things, they have
Of
effects on
course.
our body mind system. And where is it coming from? Like, are we doing it from that intention to have the connection, to have the torch? I love that image of the torch through the
Yeah.
gray zone, as there's a lot going on in the world.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there sure is. Yeah. It's
Hmm.
like I just
I
find
know.
myself just taking deep recovery breaths constantly all the time now,
Yeah.
because when these new feelings and thoughts and things are coming into our bodies, it requires that just like, and we keep going, you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. I love that we jumped right into
I
like
know. That's
the
so
depths
typical of
of
you and I. Let's just dump straight
things.
in the deep end. None of this wishy-washy bullshit at the start.
Oh
So,
no, it's all good.
mhm.
um, let's kind of rewind back a little bit because for anyone who doesn't know you, could you share a little bit um, about what inspired you to start with naturopathy and healing, and what you consider your calling and your kind of offering your work to be right now?
Oh, that's so beautiful, and such a beautiful question for me to even like think about for myself, because I really feel like I'm redefining how all of that looks and how I work in the world. So my background is in naturopathy and nutritional medicine. So I went to university and got 2 bachelor degrees in those areas, really studied the body and biochemistry of the body and anatomy and physiology, plant medicine and herbal medicine in the traditional way, and just went so deep in trying to understand the intricacies of the human body, because I am fascinated by the body. I'm still fascinated by it. I've been studying it relentlessly for 20 years in so many different modalities, and I'm still learning new stuff, and it still lights me up, because I think like how cool is this that we like have all this stuff going on and we don't even know, and it's just like it's just the gift that keeps on giving. And so that part of me is, I'm a bit of a science nerd as well. Like I love reading research papers and really love getting into the science of how we operate. And there's also a very energetic, esoteric part to me as well. So I have been, I guess, communicating with the spirit world ever since I was a child. I have always had the ability to see energy and to feel energy. Sometimes things will come through me and I know that it's not from my personality, it's something else. So I've always had that guide, or I don't really like the word channel, but I've always been open to my own sense of soul and spirit, because I've always seen it and it's always been there for me. And looking back now and a lot of the work that I've done, it's definitely in my family. There's definitely an ancestral um, link there that's come through. And so when I graduated from uni in Australia and I set up a clinic and I started seeing patients, and I worked so hard to get to this point, and I had this vision that I was holding for myself, and it was like all dressed up in corporate wear, because I always wanted to, like, I don't know, wear nice clothes and have high heels on, and I even had a briefcase to feel so important. And I had this image of how I wanted to be and what I thought that I wanted to do. And then when I graduated and started my own practice here in Australia, I I started seeing clients, and then more clients came in, and then I started building up my practice, and there was always something missing. And I went through this really deep kind of depressing state, I guess, because I climbed to the top of the mountain and I got the briefcase and I got the high heels on and I got everything that I'd been dreaming about for the decade prior, and it wasn't what I thought it was. It was just such such this feeling of like, this isn't me, this isn't who I am, this isn't how I'm meant to be doing this. And a big part of that was I wasn't acknowledging, honoring, or giving any microphone space at all to the energetic healer that lived inside of me. And so I was seeing people purely on their diet and their presenting symptoms in their body and their mental health, and more along the counseling lines. But I wasn't looking into the parts of us that we can't see, and the parts of us that we can't really even wrap words around sometimes. I could feel them energetically, but I was kind of just like, tell me what you're eating for breakfast, and pushing everything else aside. And it wasn't until I really started seeing myself and treating myself as a multi-dimensional, complex, imperfect woman that it really started opening up to me and thinking, well, there's more to healing than sitting in a clinic room with a briefcase and talking about gluten-free options for me. And so I wrote down this big list, and I remember I had like the redreaming process, and I was like, I don't want to wear shoes to work. I don't want to wear makeup to work. I want to be on a tropical island, and like just totally changed the vision. And then I ended up in Thailand and working in a health retreat there. And that is when everything just came into this essence for me of, this is what I'm meant to be doing. And so that vision transformed into creating a safe space where people can really come to heal, not in an hour consultation or a half an hour checkup, but in 7, 10 days of just yoga and beautiful surroundings and meditation and slowing down and really be held, and giving people the tools that they need, not just eat this, do that, but how do you feel about that? And can we incorporate maybe some of this? And let's watch this documentary. And I want to share this recipe. And can we talk about, your father, because I feel there's some energy there, and just make room for everything. And so that became the new dream. And that's how Pat, my husband, and I ended up in Bali, and we created Natural Instinct Healing. And it's just been such a beautiful journey and an oasis of rejuvenation and regeneration, to really hold that space, to see people return to themselves, to come home to themselves, to clean up their mind, clean up their body, really bring themselves into this balance, that word that I hate, of whatever that looks like for them, so that they can be in their best and highest potential. So when you ask about my calling is to be the best Kate that I can be. The best Kate that I can be in any moment, know what's going on. And that's like showing up in the way that I want to do as a wife and as a friend, as a daughter, as a mother, as an auntie, as all of these things that I play, and just making sure that I am living a life that is full and that is alive. Like, I want to feel everything here. I want to experience it all. I'm like, give me all the life. I shouldn't say that too much, but giving my current circumstances, but it's just like, I want to feel it all. I want to be there. I want to be present. And so that's how I'm working with people now. It's really like bringing them alive and bringing them into their full potential, igniting something in them that allows them to feel like they are in their highest and truest self, whatever that looks like for them. And the way that I do that with others is removing anything that's blocking that from happening. So it's kind of in my book, I talk about this weeding, seeding, and feeding process in order to have the most beautiful flowers and create the most stunning garden and just have this incredible forest of creation. We first need to weed and pull out everything that doesn't serve us on every single level. So whether that's physical toxins that's weighing us down, inflammation or old injuries or hormonal imbalances or viruses or bacteria or whatever it is on that level. And then also weeding out the mind, our self-sabotaging beliefs, the stories we tell ourselves, any psychic debris that we've picked up from other people, anything that keeps us constricted and stuck in something that is not our truest self. And so that's the weeding part, and then the seeding part is really allowing what wants to come through us to come through us. And then the feeding part is the everyday self-care. So that's, I'm going to treat myself with love and compassion, and I'm going to eat well, and I'm going to help others where I can, or whatever that is. But it's the day to day. So the weed, the seed, and the feed. And so that's the process that I take people through. And for me, it's cyclical. As we know, healing is never linear, and I just keep going through these cycles of that within my own life. And it's I found this word recently. It's brutiful. So it's brutal and beautiful at the same time, and I just merged them together because I kind of like how that sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
brutal process.
Right. It feels on point. It feels real. I was gonna ask you about your book and chat about that. So I think let's just do that now. So it's called The Essential Cleanse. And
Yeah.
is there anything else that you feel you'd want to add? Like, what was the original inspiration to write it? And it sounds like it's still very much on point, right? With the weeding, the seeding.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was just people kept asking me for it because they'd come on retreat and have these amazing experience, and then go home. And as anyone who's ever been on a retreat, any kind of retreat, you know that the real work starts. The rubber really hits the road when you're back at home, when the laundry is piling up and the kids are going crazy and the partners are at you for something, and there's no milk in the fridge and there's no petrol in the car. And I mean, that's where this really comes into play, because when you're lying in a hammock on a beautiful beach or under a coconut tree in Bali, it's like, yeah, I'm so aligned. But it's in these moments of chaos and uncertainty and overwhelm that we are all in right now, and that we are all collectively in, where this really comes into play. And so people kept asking me, I want you in my lounge room. That's what, like, that was the message that kept coming through. And so I wrote the book in 21 days, and it's a 21-day journey to take people through the weed, the seed, and the feeding stage. And it was such a big thing for me, as you know, being a writer. It's kind of like, open your heart and just let it bleed all over the paper, and then be totally fine with it, and then good luck and see you later. So it was such a big process. It wasn't kind of like, yeah, I wrote this book and now it's out in the world. It took me to every edge that I have ever known. I had massive vulnerability hangover. I was freaking out. I remember the day that it launched, which was years ago now. I was just shaking because I was like, the whole world is about to read my diary. And but it's been so beautiful. And I think that anyone that creates any type of art form goes through that, that part of the creation. I'm sure you go through it all the time. And it's just something that I could offer from my heart, and that was really the intention behind it.
Thank you. Yeah, those creations that we bring through, it's huge.
Yeah.
So much magic there, and so much, it feels beautiful.
It feels beautiful. I know. I feel like that's going to be our word of 2022.
I
Beautiful.
know, especially if you dare to live and let life in, like you said, right? Like
Yeah.
there's the option to numb, which is really, really tempting a lot of times. And if we
Oh,
choose
yeah.
not to, or if for the most part not to, because sometimes it's helpful,
Yeah.
then it's yeah, it's intense. And
It is. It is
incredibly
so
beautiful to
intense.
feel the connection. I mean, you're in Australia where the floods are happening at the moment, and it's so awful what has happened to so many people. And at the same time, hearing you share about the way people are showing up for each other it gives me chills of
Oh,
just
yeah, it's been
feeling the
so,
hearts.
yeah, it's been so beautiful to witness. So, just to give people a little perspective, I'm in Northern Rivers in New South Wales, and we've just had a massive flood that has come and left about 300,000 people displaced and evacuated. People have lost homes, have lost businesses, have lost their farms, their animals. There's been deaths. It's just been absolutely horrific. We had no support from any government officials for 10 days. So the community rallied and set up all of these evacuation centers. I mean, anyone that had a boat was going out in these crazy waters and rescuing people who were sitting on top of their roofs. And it was just extraordinary to witness. And it's been so brutal. I think this is going to be our word, babe, for this year, right? It's what it's shown me is that I feel like COVID completely divided us, especially here in Australia. I'm not sure like what the pulse point was like anywhere else because I have no direct reference point, but here it was like, you're wearing a mask, you're not wearing a mask, you're vaccinated, you're not vaccinated, get away from me, get close to me. And it was just like this division. And someone said to me, the other day, isn't it interesting when we're in a quote unquote fake crisis, humans are shit. Like they're assholes to each other. Like it was awful. But when humans are in a real crisis, that's when they really shine. And that's where it's like everything else just gets out and it's like human to human, heart to heart. I'm here. What do you need? Let me know. And that's what I'm feeling and witnessing. And again, it's like it's this gray area of being able to hold it all and feel it all. It is devastating and it is so heartwarming at the same time. And I think that our capacity to really feel, like you were mentioning before, and really show up to life in a way that makes us feel alive is so needed right now because we need to feel all of this pain in the world. Otherwise, we're not going to fully process it. And it needs to run through our body. There's this is one thing that's disastrous and it's apocalyptic here in Australia, but this is one tiny piece of the world and there's so much going on everywhere else. But our ability to be with what's happening and be with it in our bodies in a way where we don't numb and where we don't run away and when we don't contract, we just let it run through us is the medicine for this time. And so, yeah, I was really thinking about that this morning in my meditation. I dropped my eldest daughter off to school and I'm completely safe. The water didn't enter into my house at all. Our office got taken out, but my family's safe. We're dry. We've got power back on. And I was talking to this mother that had lost everything. She has nothing left, nothing. And I was able to feel grateful for what I have and feel her insane pain as well. And I think that when we can strip all those barriers down and really meet people like that, that's how we're going to really lift and change what's happening now in the world. But we need to do that for ourselves first. We need to do that work for ourselves first. And like you shared, it's like meeting ourselves in our wholeness and in our natural instincts and in our own expression and being okay with our anger and our rage and our jealousy and our comparisons and all of these things that we deem quote unquote negative, just to make space for everything and be here with it all is definitely the medicine for our time.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd love to shift a little bit into picking some of your wisdom for the listeners and exploring some of the areas that people might be going through.
Mm.
And one piece, you as a mother of three, that I know you're very knowledgeable and experienced in, is fertility, pregnancy, motherhood, hormonal health. Um, and I was wondering if you could speak to the topics of hormone balance, there's
Mm.
a word, um, and fertility, and
Mhm.
any tips you have for women who are wanting to balance their cycles, who are maybe wanting to get pregnant, or just getting into a full thriving stage around their hormones and their fertility.
Yeah, I love this question. And I think that it's so needed and so incredibly important. Um, the first thing that I notice in women, and this is very, very true for me, is that we need to be inside our bodies first and foremost. Like you mentioned before, that mind of yours, with your German heritage, and it's so strong and it loves to come in and control and take over. What that does, and so many of us can relate, I mean, I relate 100%, but what that does is it takes all of the energy out of our body and into the mind sphere. Also, if you're in some kind of pain, whether it's emotional pain, you've just been through a breakup with a partner, or just this kind of trying to find out your purpose, or not feeling right, or just there's so much helplessness in the world and you don't even know where to start, or actual physical pain like painful menstruation, painful headaches, painful digestive issues, all of these things present themselves to get your attention. They're not, quote unquote, things to be solved. They're not things to be pushed aside and suppressed and just take some pain medication and get on with it. The signs and symptoms that our body gives us essentially is trying to give us a message. And when I say living outside the body, I remember, and you can probably relate to, honey, when I first moved to Ubud and was going around and seeing some of the incredible healers we have there. And one of them is Dr. Adolf Brown, who's a dear friend of both of us, and his gorgeous wife, Tamara. And he said, "You're so outside your body." And I'd never heard that phrase before. And I was like, what is he talking about, outside my body? Like, this guy is seriously deluded. He has no idea. and I didn't know what the concept was, but I wasn't living in here at all. I was always either up in my head and trying to run a business and on the ground and push, 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 or I was trying to escape and go into some kind of, spiritual euphoria where I was always looking for the next kind of spiritual high and bliss, and just like, yeah, I just want to like do some yoga and hang around. I wasn't in tune with what was really, really happening inside my body. And so when he said to me, "You're not inside your body," I was just like, what does that mean? But it was such a beautiful question to ask me because it was an invitation to come back in. And whenever I see a woman that is experiencing a lot of hormonal dysregularities, whether it is through the menstrual cycle, whether it's through sleep, whether it's through, in any stage, whether it's perimenopausal, postmenopausal, um, even through their eating habits, their moods, their skin tone, all of that, it all comes back to how in tune are they with what's going on in here. And how we come back home and get in tune is listen to the signs and symptoms of our body. So the first piece to that is always just taking an inventory of what's happening. And it's like, okay, well, I've got this flutter in my chest and I'm feeling really anxious, and I know I'm not digesting my food properly, and I'm not sleeping well enough, and I'm on my screen too much, and just not going into a shame spiral, but just doing this inventory of what's really calling me right now. And wherever the biggest pain point is what's calling you right now. And that can show up in our emotions, that can show up physically in our body, that can show up in our dream life. that can show up in so many different areas because we are so multidimensional. And it's really taking this inventory with no judgment, no blame, no shame, just assessing what is, and then going into the practicality of that, which is, okay, how can I fix, change, mold, heal? It's like, how can I meet this with love and care and compassion and bring myself back into alignment? So for any woman that's listening to this and going, yes, 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 this me, this me, this me, the first thing to do is, what does my body need? What does it need? I wish that I could give every woman this 5-step process, but healing doesn't work like that. That works on Instagram for a quick 30-second, oh, yeah, okay, 5 ways to whatever it is, shiny hair or flat stomachs or whatever. But your intuition, your wisdom, your ability to go in and meet your own needs is the way. It is the medicine. And of course, we get support around that because we don't always have that area of expertise. So, I mean, even me, I'm a naturopath. I see a naturopath as a client because I want someone to literally tell me what to do and what to take so that I don't miss anything. But what does my body need? What does my body need? And we always start so simply. Number one on every woman's list should be rest. No matter where they are, what they're doing, what their circumstances are, there is no award for being overworked and pushed and go, 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 go. And I feel like that way of being in the world as women, it has to change. I'm talking to myself directly here, in case you can't notice. And we need to carve out a new way. And that this is rest first. Rest first, then we rise. And so it's really rest. Are you getting enough water? Are you getting enough sunlight? How many hours have you spent off your screen? When was the last time you went out in nature? When was the last time you had a self-pleasure practice or went for a massage or went, dancing and allowed that wild woman out? These are the basic fundamental things that we always overlook because we think, okay, I've got to have this many milligrams of magnesium and I've got to combine that with this many milligrams of fish oil and I've got to balance that with this many things of like simple, slow practices are the gateway in. And then we just keep building on those. So rest, sleep, hydration, connection to nature, connection offline. And then what's happening in my mind, it's like, yeah, I'm overworked. I am busy. My mind it's like a freight train going off in there. Like, what does it need? Well, it needs to slow down. It needs to, I'm just shooting from the hip here, but just some examples. It needs to know that it's safe, to know that I'm going to be okay. It needs to reach out to others because I'm feeling so lonely, right? And then in that soul, why am I doing all of this? Why am I actually here? I've got my foot on that accelerator and I'm going so fast and I'm not taking it off. Why? What are the bigger intentions here at play? And when you start this active self-inquiry, the answers are just there. They really are. I always say to people, you know what to eat. I mean, of course, I sit with someone and I do this all the time when I'm doing diets and nutrition with people, and we'll tweak certain things here and add some protein earlier on in the day and making sure that you're spacing this out and add some more omegas here from a professional point of view. But we know how to take care of ourselves, coming back to that fundamental instinct. So what I'm really interested in is, why aren't we as women? Why don't we do all of the things that we know that nourish us? And if you look at it from that reframe, that's what needs to be addressed first. Because I can rattle off and say, well, you need fish oil and you need protein and you need this and that. And then it becomes just like another thing to do. But if you're looking at, what are my needs? What's the inventory of what's going on? What are the signs and symptoms? What's my body telling me? And why aren't I taking care of myself? Why aren't I resting?
Mhm.
Why am I scrolling at midnight every night? You know, that self inquiry, and again, no blame, no shame, no judgment, but that self inquiry in itself serves up so much potent self awareness that then the rest of the things come into alignment easily. And what's beautiful about this is you'll meet the right dietitian that you need to go and see, or someone will say, oh, I just had this amazing cranial, and you're like, that's exactly what I need, and then that will come to you. It's like all the things are always there. You know, when I was studying before I started studying herbal medicine, I spent a lot of time in the Amazon jungle, and one of my teachers there said to me, the most poisonous plants in the whole jungle, the ones that can kill you within seconds, the medicine, the antidote is always with it where you can see, always where you can see. And that just stuck with me on that metaphoric level my whole life, because it's like everything we need is so close to us, always. But we just need to be in tune with those needs and to be open to receiving the little whispers that come when they come. So
Mm.
for a woman that's listening to this and is really wanting to go into her fertility, her hormonal, her that side of things, I would say, what does your womb want? What does your womb need? And how can you serve her? How can you serve her? And that's such a beautiful gateway in. Actually, I'm just thinking I have a process to do that, and I'll send you the link and you can share it with your listeners
Mm.
to enable them to have that direct experience, because it's there's just so many jewels there for us to explore.
Mm. Yeah, that would be absolutely amazing. We'll share the link in the show notes. Oh, why am I not doing it? That is massive and so spot on. There's
Yeah.
such big questions, and I can see how then, your original like um going deeper and bringing in like the whole being, because then I like, for me, if I'm just doing that exercise in a very basic way, I get to certain beliefs that were planted when I was very little.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned like, oh, father, grandmother, whatever, like immediately then comes. And if I then don't look at that, I know the hormonal balance piece or whatever it is that I choose to work on would have a harder time to come into place, even if I do follow every single supplement that
Yeah.
I'm told to take.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
even, I'm a naturopath. I'm trained in this. And even when I go to prescribe something for myself, I'm like, what's my intention for taking this? If my intention is to bring my body back into balance, to really be the best that I can be, then yes, it's a green light. Go and take it. But if it's, I want to get out of my pain body, I just want to fix myself, I'm broken, I'm not good enough, I'm not this, I'm not that, then that supplement is not going to get to where it needs to go inside my body. So on that energetic level. And so it that exploration of intention again and again and again and again, even before I eat, and this is a beautiful tool that I do, I I ask myself, what do I want to feel like in 2 hours time? That's when I'm choosing my meals. It's like, how do I want to feel in 2 hours time? So this morning, for example, um, I have been running around and dropping off things at evacuation centers and collecting things to take to people, and doing lots of laundry for people that don't have power. So I was a bit like, all over the place. And I knew I had this interview today. And so I made myself a really big cooked breakfast with mushrooms and tomatoes and kale and eggs and gluten-free toast and avocado, just to bring my energy down and in. because I knew that if I was just running off a croissant and coffee, for example, which does happen, I am not perfect, I would, my energy would be all over the place. And so it's these little things that are actually big things. And self-care isn't it's not how we treat ourselves. It becomes a whole way of life. And that's what is really exciting me at the moment as well. And it's like, how can I nourish myself with what I'm wearing? And your jewelry is a huge part of that. It's always like, I mean, I never think, oh, I'm going to wear these earrings because they match this dress. I'm like, how do I want to feel? I want to feel powered. I want to feel embodied. I want to feel like a goddess, like getting into my feminine. And so then I will choose pieces, because I have so many of Ananda, because I'm like literally your biggest fan in the world, to match that frequency that I want to bring forward. And so it's not like health related now. It's more like how I live my life, how I show up every day. I think I just went on a massive tangent. Sorry about
No,
that.
it's perfect. It's exactly that. Well, since you mentioned Ananda, and it's been so beautiful to have you by my side on this journey of running this business and designing this jewelry. Just curious, if you have any favorite pieces, or in general, just how yeah, what the jewelry brings out in you. You touched on it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, firstly, it's been so beautiful to watch you create and to see this process. And for those of you listening, Christina is like, it's not just creating an earring and sending it off to the makers. It is like this process of bringing it through from her heart and sitting with it and drawing with it and feeling it, and really like, what can I give the world in this way? And I'd never seen anyone create jewelry like that before until I met you. It was so beautiful. And I'm continued to, I mean, you know, I'm constantly inspired and in awe of you. And just every new collection, I'm like drooling, like, because it keeps moving and changing and morphing like you do, like we do, like we all do, which is so beautiful. But the intention, again, behind each piece, it's so thought out, it's so felt, it's so it's just it encompasses all of us and all that we carry as women. And so what I love about Ananda, first of all, it's held me through so many times in my life. Like this beautiful citrine ring I have here, Pat bought me for one of our wedding anniversaries like 8 or 9 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I have gorgeous earrings. I can't remember the name of any of them, but that I bought myself after hitting a huge career milestone. I have a pair of earrings that I bought myself after losing a baby. Like there's just been so many times in my life that Ananda has come in and become part of my self-care and part of my adornment. And it's so beautiful. And so to me, like I said, the jewelry, it's not about matching something with this. It's like, how do I want to show up in the world? How do I want to feel? And who do I want to support? And I think that now we've all woken up to the fact that the fashion industry, the jewelry industry, even my industry, the wellness industry, like we need to make massive changes in the way that we consume if we're going to save and live on this planet for much longer. And so that piece for me, the sustainability piece, the giving back piece, how much integrity you show up in a brand and in your own life in that way, I'm constantly inspired. And you've actually taught me so much in how to do that. In terms of choosing a favorite piece, I knew you were going to ask me, and I'm like, that's like picking my favorite kid. Like that's not even, how can you even ask that? If I pick Lakshmi, I'll be cheating on my earrings, and if I pick them, I'll be cheating on my ring, and it's just like, how can I do that? But I will say, and I had them on, but because I had to put headphones on because it's so loud. these earrings, the
One day at a time.
one day at a time. So
Mm-hmm.
I had a really bad accident 3 months ago that left me in a wheelchair, and I'm still recovering. And these arrived like a month into my recovery. And so I wear these every day, and it's for the message. I mean, they look gorgeous, and I love looking gorgeous, even if I'm lying in bed and can't move. But it's the meaning and the intention behind it. And so I would have to say, for now, these are my favorites.
One day at a time.
One day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you a funny story. So this one, You Are Loved.
Which we happen to wear the same one
Oh, we've got the
today.
same one. Yay.
Unplanned.
I know. So this is one of my favorite ones. And I have a little spot in my bathroom where I put my jewelry, and I try and put it up high so that my kids can't get it. I have 3 girls. I mean, the little one, she loves playing, but the other 2 are 4 and 6, and they've just started like getting into jewelry. And so Ruby, my eldest, she's starting to read as well. And she was like, she read the back, and she's sounding out the words, "You are loved." When they're starting to read it, so cute. "You are loved." And she's like, "How come only you are loved? How come we're all not loved?" And I was like, well, it's for the person who wears it to remind them that they are loved. And so now her and Evie go in and get this necklace and put it on themselves. So they're like, "You are loved," so that they can be loved too. And they're already fighting over which pieces they'll get when I die, which is hilarious. I don't even know where they got that from. But I think that's what's so beautiful about your brand, is that it's, and it is jewelry that I will pass down to my daughters, which makes it even more special.
I miss those girls. Oh my God.
They miss you. They're like, "Auntie Titi."
I know my name. Titi.
Yeah. Titi.
Aw, thank you. My heart feels so warm. You talked about the girls, and there's just one piece that I was gonna ask you still around the motherhood topic of having gone through 3 pregnancies, 3 births, and your eldest being 6 now. What are the pieces that you've learned on that journey, and how, let's say, was this last year with Frankie, your youngest, being here? What's different? And yeah, I'm gonna weave this one in as well, and it's a very, very big topic. And you mentioned you did lose a child, and just for other mothers out there, like just anything that comes through at the moment that you'd still want to add to that topic, to that theme.
Yeah. I think like it's just so big, and I'm still very in the early stages, like Pat, my husband, he's like, "We're going to have 3 teenage daughters in the house at one time." Like, he's massively freaking out. And I'm like, "Yeah, but we'll get you. It's going to be okay." But so I share that because I still feel like I'm learning. I still feel like I've got my training wheels on. I feel like I'm failing every single day. And the thing about that is being tender with myself, I think, is probably the biggest thing that I have had to really embody, is this: you're doing the best you can, and that's enough. And because I'm prone, like you, we've spoken about this many times, and I'm sure many listeners can relate, that I put so much pressure on myself to get it right. And so it's that tenderness and that piece of really just taking some of the pressure off myself, and just being the best that I can in the moment, and having to be okay with that. And so my journey into motherhood was a wild and rocky road, and it has continued. like you mentioned, I lost 3 babies before I had Ruby, our eldest. The first one was very traumatic in terms of my physical state. So I was basically in a state and very high risk for internal hemorrhage and rupture of like my whole womb inside. And so my only options were to take a round of chemotherapy to abort the baby, or have one of my fallopian tubes removed. Because I was in Bali at the time, I couldn't fly to somewhere else to get other opinions, or, you know, the medical system in Indonesia is not as great as we know, as in somewhere like Singapore or Australia, for example. And it was really scary. It was terrifying. And what broke my heart is that, and any woman that's had a miscarriage, lost a baby, it's something that you want so much, and then you get it and then it's taken away from you. It's like a grief that I've never felt and I would never wish upon anyone. So the first one, I had a lot of physical things that I had to overcome. And then I'd done so much work on myself. I had a 2-year break then and was just like, okay, I'm coming back into my body. I'm going to work through my shit. I'm going to get myself cleaned up. I'm going to get myself so ready to have a child. And I did a massive detox and purge, and, was looking at some inner child stuff and weeding through so many things. And then when I felt ready again, which was a 2-year process, I remember I conceived like the very first time. I was like, okay, I'm ready to have a child. And then I was pregnant within 5 minutes. And I'm like, this is it. This is everything that I've hoped for. And I've done the work and I've showed up and I'm such a good person. And then I lost that one as well. And so again, it was like more layers, more undoing, more unraveling. And then to go on and lose another one, just, it took me to so many different edges within myself. And what I know now, being on the other side of that and being like, my children are all here in the world, is that if I had that first baby at the time when I was pregnant, I wouldn't be the mother that they needed me to be. And even having these 3 little girls, it's like where I was when Ruby was born is so different than where I am when Frankie was born. And I feel like life conspires with us because it's a co-creation. It's not just about us, it's the egg and the sperm and then this soul that wants to come through. Is that all of my children pushed me to an edge to be the mother that they needed, not how I wanted to show up or look like, or, it's like I needed to become what they needed me to be. And so when you ask, how has it changed? It's so different. And I think knowing them and seeing their little personalities, it's so beautiful to gain more insight and more wisdom around that. One of the things that happened when I had my miscarriages, and something that I do like to talk about, was there were so many women in my life that had been through that. It's so common, and we just do not talk about it. There's so much shame. And I remember feeling so much shame about it. I'm like, I'm a woman. This is literally the only thing I'm meant to be doing, and my body can't even do it properly. And all of these other stories I was telling myself. I remember after the second one, I was just so emotionally distraught, and I flew home to Australia just to have some R&R, and I really wanted to be around my mum. And I remember I was like, I need to go to my grandmother's house. I don't know why. It's just like this pull to go and see her. And my grandmother lives in Australia, an 8-hour drive from where I was. And it was like something was taking over me, and I just jumped in my car and just drove 8 hours and just sat with her. And I told her what had happened, and I said, I just lost a baby. And she put her arms around me and she started crying, and she just said, I lost one too. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was the first person she'd ever told. She was
Wow.
87 years old. My grandfather didn't even know.
Oh my
And
God.
so there's just, for me in that moment, it was just like, we need to talk about all of these things of being a woman, not the shiny, glittery parts that are fun, but the depths and the shadows and the pain and the rising and the resurrection. All of that is the feminine, whether are in a female body or not, and we need to talk about it. So um, my motherhood journey, even when I had Frankie, and all of my births were entirely different too. I had an emergency Caesar, and then I had a very powerful vaginal birth after that Caesar, and then my last birth with Frankie was the birth I'd always dreamed of, which was just like me squatting in the backyard and bringing her out on my own with Pat, which was incredible. But um, and going through all of those layers, and it's just really acknowledging ourselves in all of that. Because I remember with Ruby, and I was becoming full term, and I flew back to Australia for her to be birthed, and the obstetrician said to me, okay, so this is your first pregnancy. And I said, yep, it's my first pregnancy, my first baby. And he said, oh, you've had 3 miscarriages. And I said, oh yeah. And he said, well, so this is your 4th baby. And I was like, oh my God, like yes, this is my 4th pregnancy. I didn't kind of acknowledge that, because birth is still seen as like a medical condition instead of the
Mhm.
sacred
Yeah.
act of creation that it is. And so, no matter what's happened to us as women, whether you're birthing an actual baby, whether you're a step mama or a plant mama or a fur mama, or you're creating something incredible in the life, because that creative energy is birth energy, we need to acknowledge all of these things for us to truly step into our wisdom. And I think getting older, I'm turning 40 this year, which I'm like having a mild freak out about, but that's another conversation. Um, in a funny way. It's like we need to own all these parts of ourselves, what's happened to our bodies, what's we've been through, and that's how we turn those wounds into wisdom. And so birth, miscarriages, being a mum, it's constantly this process of I can do this. I'm doing this. It's going to be okay. And sitting with all parts of myself that are trying to tell me that I'm not doing it well enough. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of those. Trust me, it's a lot of those.
Yeah. I think I think we all have them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Thank you. I'm like
Mm.
lacking words for a moment. Thank you for the depth and the vulnerability of going to those places, because I do agree
Mm.
with you. It needs to be spoken about more. There's so many
Yeah.
women who go through the different versions of it. And we're not going to go into that theme, but including the women who deliberately choose to not become a birth mother of a human, right? And have all these
Yeah.
other forms that you just described of creating and being alive. Like we're birthing something every day, right? With every
Mm.
exhale almost. And thank you. Yeah, incredibly
Mm.
beautiful. Oh my God. So, so, so rich. Um, we're slowly coming towards the end, and I'm wondering around your own practices. Are there any practices left? We've spoken about the perfect, not perfect, and in a way, like throwing it all out and trusting. And I'm wondering, in your own practice, is there anything that is left for you? Like, yeah, those are the things that I know I need to do. We did speak to the rest, but anything that you're open to sharing about Kate's world of practices and self care.
I think I mean, I'm laughing on the inside because I just feel like I'm in the middle of a chaotic circus right now. And it's like, what are your practices? And I'm like, survival. That's seriously how it feels. But again, for me, honey, it's stripping it all back, and it's just like, what do I need in this moment? And for me, and I'm sure many women out there can relate, it's like, I need space and time to myself to regenerate. And so, how can I carve out that space and time for myself, not to do something, but to just be with whatever that is? And so, for me, like I'm a very busy woman. I don't want to be. I mean, I glorified busy as being important for so many years, and I just don't subscribe to that anymore. But I'm still busy. I'm raising three small kids. I'm working. I'm doing a lot. And so I can't get an hour on the yoga mat every day. I just can't. And, before I had children, I was like, everyone can have an hour on the yoga mat. And I remember saying that to a client that had four kids. And I was like, you've just got to make the time. And I remember ringing that client after I had Ruby, and I was like, I'm so sorry, I just didn't get it. And she was like, it's fine. But what can you do? Okay, what can you do? If you can get an hour on the yoga mat or whatever that looks like for you, do that. But for me, it's like 15-minute chunks of time at the moment. And I don't fill my space so much anymore. Like, I'd always be cooking and listening to a podcast or listening to an audiobook when I'm driving or folding laundry and, doing something. There was always just so much input coming into my body that I just would get completely overwhelmed at the littlest things. And so I just really have just made so much space around me as much as I can, given my circumstances. So space has been a huge one for me, and also a really good lesson in boundaries. A lot of the time when we say yes to someone, that could mean saying no to ourselves. And then that becomes a self-betrayal. If it's like, yeah, I'll do that, I'll do that, I'll do that. But I'm betraying myself, because what I really need to do now is just lie on the floor and get my legs up the wall, put my hands in my womb, and do some, breathing, and so it's really getting in touch with my deeper needs, not on that level, but on that more nuanced, subcutaneous level of like of of the quieter feminine voice, and what does she need. And so that's been a big process. And you know my practice now, it literally looks like going out and lying in a big starfish on the earth. Like, that's just what I do. That's how I restore. I'm really conscious at the moment about what's coming into my world in terms of who I'm following on Instagram, and those types of things as well. I haven't read a non-fiction book for 2 years. I've been consciously only consuming art, and that has made a profound difference in the way that my brain is operating. I feel more in touch with the writer inside of me and the creator inside of me, instead of looking at all of these books that I should read because I'm broken and I need to fix myself. Just reading an amazing novel that just like will magically transform something inside of me that needs transforming as well. And being around good humans, I think it's really important to take a inventory of like, who are you spending all your time with? Coming back to Australia was really hard because I was in such a beautiful community in Bali for 11 years, and had my soul family there, and just those relationships as you get older, they take time. You can't just go on one date with a new friend and have that rapport and feel safe and that vulnerability. And of course there's soul to soul connections where you get that instant, we know each other, we've got each other. But there's also so much that goes into building relationships that I feel like I'm starting all over again, in a way, in terms of the actual physical people around me, which is exciting. And it's also made me realize, how epic people, just good, solid humans, are so important to my well-being. So important to my well-being. Like, I'm at this point in my life where I can't do all the small talk and all the like the bullshit anymore. I'm just like, let's be real, let's be here, let's just masks off, authenticity at the forefront. Like, that's how I show up, and having other people that are willing to meet me in that space is so important for me. So um yeah, they've been my biggest things, I think. And just
Mhm.
also being with my kids, like really being with them, just the stuff that they come out with. Honestly, it's just like, I'm like, who are you guys? Just the way that they see the world, and those little minds that aren't tainted with heaviness and wounds and conditioning yet. Fingers crossed, I'm doing my best to keep them wild and free. But kids are kids are extraordinary. I mean, and one of the biggest things about motherhood is like, never underestimate them, because I've had to have some big, big conversations with my kids this year. I mean, going through my accident was huge for our whole family, and then we all got COVID, which was a really big thing, and then we've been through this natural disaster. It's March, like it's like, oh my god! But what I've had to carry them through, it's big things for these little brains to try and piece together, and without you know pre- trying to protect them in this world that's crazy, and without sugarcoating anything. I've had some really real conversations with them, and how they responded has just been like phenomenal. So I love spending time with children, because it's just, I mean, they're so fun, and adults are so boring anyway. So it's it's just, it really is healing for me in so many ways.
Wow, thank you. I love listening to you, and it's so genuinely, not only is there a cookie cutter solution for a person, right? There's like you can't give a cookie cutter solution. It's not even for the moment, right? How you
No.
saying it really depends on the moment. Like to just really go away from these 5 steps or whatever we're
Yeah,
looking for, right? Of like,
yeah,
give me the solutions, give me the recipe,
yeah,
and going back to really the instinct, right? Of like what right this moment is needed, and
yeah,
with those guidelines of the connection,
yeah.
so powerful.
It's so powerful, and it's so true. And just to add a tiny little piece there, when I was looking for the 5 steps, or I want the like, you know, I want to feel like this, or I want to balance my hormones, or I want to do that. It's like, what part of me wants that? And if you can meet that part, then it becomes a truly healing experience. And so, what I mean by that is, when I'm looking for how to sleep train my kids 101, how to how to lose baby weight, how to do this, how to do that, the part that is searching for that is often, I'm scared,
Hmm.
or I
Hmm.
feel alone,
Hmm.
or I'm overwhelmed,
Yeah.
or I feel like I'm going to get swallowed by this world. And if you can meet yourself, what I've learned to do is, if you can meet yourself there, and it's like, okay, well, if I feel scared, what do I need to feel safe, in terms of buying another like $97 product off the internet that's going to sit on my computer and never get open? Like, what do I need to feel safe in this moment? And so, one of those beautiful things is asking, who wants to know. When we're off on those,
Hmm.
finding those
Hmm.
cookie cutter solutions, it's like, who wants to know, and allowing that to come forward. That's been a real game changer for me. And I just wanted
Hmm.
to share, because hopefully that will be able to help
Hmm.
someone else.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm wondering what's your what are you working on right now? I know it's been humongous with the retreat center and the pandemic, and we didn't touch on it very much. And we know, there's been a lot of changes for people. So I'm curious what you're working on right now, what lights you up in terms of creations, what's coming down
Mm.
the pipeline.
Well, yeah, COVID changed our entire trajectory. We had like this, not like a 5-year plan, but like a 18-month, 2-year trajectory we were on, which looked like building our own retreat center up in Ubud in Bali, and construction for that was underway. And because of most of our clientele are international, so we have people from all over fly to us in Bali and come to one of our retreats, and that just all got halted. And so it wasn't, I know at the start of COVID, like a lot of people just jumped straight online, and I was really hesitant to do that because I didn't want it to be this knee-jerk fear reaction of like, I've got to get this out there. And so it's given me a lot of time to really sit in the why again. Why am I doing this? What's going to bring me alive? Because if I'm alive, my family's alive, my relationships are alive, and other people will come alive. What's going to bring me alive? So the last 2 years have just been so much self-inquiry. In saying that, I still have to run a business, feed my kids, pay our rent. You can't just like take 2 years off and inquire about the soul's purpose of being on earth. Like there's this practical element to it, which is like we're human beings and we need to survive. And so it's been beautiful, hard, challenging, overwhelming, and really moving to merge these two pieces and really bring forth something that is meeting all of those needs. And so we're running retreats here in Australia, which has been so beautiful. Pat's flying back to Bali soon, fingers crossed, to start putting some life into our half-built retreat center there. So that's a big watch this space. And for me personally, I've been mentoring clients. So I've been taking men and women through a journey together, and it's really this weed, seed, and feeding journey. And so we do. It's called the three moons because I'm with someone for 3 whole moons. So we go really hard on the ritual with the new moon and the full moon. But I just sit with them and I'm here to serve them in any which way is possible for them to step into their highest self. So my clients now all look at their diet, assess their diet, look at what they're eating, their lifestyle, their digestive system, their immune system, what's happening in the body, what's happening on that anatomic, biochemical, really dense level. And then also their mental health and what's going on there, and their career and relationships, and all the different pieces. And then we go up into where are they really self-sabotaging, what's their ancestral lineage that wants to come through, the psychic debris that's hanging around, past partners that need clearing, what's holding them down or in from not expressing the truth of who they are. And so working with people one-on-one through that process has been the greatest joy of the last 2 years, because before, a lot of my work was focused on speaking and writing and flying there for a keynote and presenting that, and bringing it all back down to this really one-on-one sacred containers and holding people in again. It's just felt so beautiful. I only take on 4 people at a time, so it's very intimate and personal, and that's what I'm really loving doing. So yeah, that's what's happening at the moment, and that could change next week, knowing me, but who knows?
It sounds amazing. Wow,
Mm,
lucky beings that get to be with you that up close. Oh
yeah.
my God, Kate. I I just fell even more in love with you, and I've known you for almost
Oh,
a decade. Thank you so, so much.
thank you,
Such
honey.
wisdom and heart. And,
Oh,
thank
thank
you.
you. And thank you for holding this space. I love the name of this podcast, Sensitive Matters, because I really think it's these moments when we can connect in vulnerability and heart to heart that humankind needs right now. And you're just holding such a potent vessel on top of all of the other things that you do, and never stop creating jewelry. I will buy all of your pieces until the day I die. And I just love you so much, Angel.